been a really cool year in that respect.
So the words got out.
We gotta act right, you know?
If you're going to say it, let's do it.
Yeah, there is a gleam in your eye when you talk about Flossie Bryant.
And so whenever we disincentivize development in bad areas or risky areas.
Yeah, beyond those tangible wins, I think it's interesting that we're seeing local leaders lean into this discussion. And we are a Tree City, USA.
There you go.
There you go.
Guess what?
So what needs to happen for that to become a reality?
The following is a conversation between Roger Shew and Isabelle Shepherd. We asked them to sit down and sort of do a victory lap for some of the environmental wins that we had here in Wilmington back in 2025. There's some really key important things that happened, and we thought it was worth highlighting them again. Hope you enjoy the conversation.
So, Roger, I remember that the first time I met you, funny enough, I was actually interviewing you about environmental topics. I worked at WHQR, the local public radio station, and you were sort of my go-to guy anytime I needed something environmental. And it was like your range of expertise also was so broad. It was anything, you had an answer for me. So it's really such an honor that you now serve on the board of the Alliance for Cape Fear Trees. It's a joy to work with you in a different context. And I've got to say, just seeing you behind a microphone, I'm having a weird deja vu moment here. So it's really cool.
Well, likewise, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. And you guys pestered me long enough to get me on the Alliance board.
Harassed.
No, that was harassed.
Straight up harassment.
And so anyway, but the Alliance, as well as many of the other boards, have been really successfully advocating for important things. Glad you're on as the executive director of the Alliance, among other things that you've done in the past that have been very important. And of course, in this past year, and in fact, couple of years, there's been some successes here in Wilmington, New Hanover County, relative to the what we would say is the environmental side of the business.
Yeah.
And so maybe you could tell us a little bit of stuff from what you saw with your work with the trees for Wilmington, New Hanover County, and the Alliance over the past year.
Sure. So it has been a year of growth, pardon the pun. But in the last planting season, so 2024 to 2025, the city planted 400 trees across the city. And then this year for this planting season, 2025 to 2026, they aim to add another 600. So those are going in public spaces, mostly along streets all across the city. We really applaud the city for their efforts there. We also have been planting a lot all across the city. So this planting season, we will be adding 225 trees to our landscape. We just came off of a fantastic planting on the north side this past weekend. We had 65 volunteers come out to plant 100 trees in the north side of Wilmington, which is a tree poor area. It's an area that faces environmental inequities that can be traced all the way back to the Jim Crow era, to redlining. So when folks were having trouble getting mortgages in neighborhoods with people of color, they also weren't seeing green infrastructure investment. So fewer street trees, fewer parks. And we know that trees have a plethora of benefits that should be enjoyed by all, right? Economic benefits, environmental benefits, health, wellness, all of it, right? And so that really needs to be shared by our population as a whole. And I'm very proud that, yes, putting a tree in the ground, no matter where you put it, is a good thing. Put trees everywhere for anyone who's listening. But we try to focus our efforts when we're a small nonprofit and when there's so much need, we try to focus it where we're going to make the greatest impact.
Yeah, in fact, one of the things that happened from the past few years was we saw, for many reasons, Florence, but also development, we actually lost trees in Wilmington and New Hanover County.
Yeah. And
so getting to the point of replacing those trees and even going further is really important. So the decreases that we'd seen of 4 and 7%, depending, for the area, increasing that canopy back, is really important. to
Yeah.
us, as you say, for many reasons.
Absolutely. And, not only is it 100 trees planted along the streets of the north side, we're also focused this year, I think this is really cool, on educational institutions. So we'll be planting 40 to 50 at DC Virgo Preparatory Academy on Nixon Street. Once again, on the north side, we'll be adding about 20 to 30 trees to the Dreams of Wilmington site, and 65 trees to Glow Academy. So we know that trees have a direct impact on student attention levels, on asthma and respiratory illnesses, which lead to kids missing school for those reasons. It helps with play, and it encourages activity and learning and investment and interest in the environment. So I'm really pleased with all of the tree planting efforts, and I just see that being a really big win for our community, and we're proud to have partnered with the City of Wilmington. They support our Tree Stewards program, which is a volunteer group of trained folks who have received education from Bartlett tree experts, and they tend to the trees that we plant all across the city. So it's been a really cool year in that respect.
So the word's got out.
The word has gotten out.
And so one of the things with that I find really important for any of this is with the increasing development that we've had in the city and the county, obviously, and with the new plan, the comp plan.
Yeah,
2050.
Destination 2050.
So one of the things that it mentions in there is that, in fact, that there will be another 80,000 people here by 2050. And whenever you're adding in that many people, obviously something's got to give. You've got to have development space. So one of the things that we've been arguing for several years now, and particularly with the Alliance, but
Advocating, not arguing, advocating.
Advocating for. And advocating for is to actually, whenever you're thinking about development, is to maintain some of those natural areas. It's not just having that 20% of natural area that is required, within our development ordinances, but making sure that's maintained so that it truly does good for stormwater management,
right.
Flood control, and the other issues that you've mentioned. So that's one of the things that we're looking. So another win that we've actually had this year is thinking about the comp plan.
Yeah.
And so one of the things, there's 4 pieces that's mentioned in there, right?
Yeah.
And one of them is environmental stewardship and resilience.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! So that was a really big win, I think, for us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we submitted comments to New Hanover County about that comprehensive plan, and we were really pleased to see some of it was included word for word. So it's, I think, a win from this last year that's a little less tangible than pointing to, say, the West Bank purchase or Flossie Bryan, which we should definitely get to, and I want you to lead the way there. But beyond those tangible wins, I think it's interesting that we're seeing local leaders lean into this discussion. Even if we haven't necessarily solved a problem yet, I think there's a lot of conversations that are happening, and a lot of great interest in this work, and we're seeing that play out, and I'm really hopeful for how that develops in the coming year. But again, we're reflecting on the last one, so tell us all about Flossie Bryan.
So before I mention Flossie Bryan, I really want to give credit for the past few years. It's been a sea change, actually, because I've been seeing this for several years now.
Yeah.
It's to see the change that's occurred with the advocacy for preserving areas that our commissioners and the city council have done. They've actually done a really fine job of supporting these things and the idea of moving and preserving areas. And that's one hope that we all have with the new comp plan as we do the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance changes as well, at least we hope there's a few changes.
Yes.
Is that, you're looking at environmental stewardship.
Yeah.
And they have really gone full tilt into that, which led to the purchase by the county of the Flossie Bryan tract out on Independence, as well as the 28 acres on the West Bank. And I particularly take interest in both of those because I've been working on them a while. And the Bryan tract is 60 acres down on Independence. And it used to be a farm, small farm. And one of the things that would be fantastic is to maybe reestablish part of that as another farm
There's
area.
a gleam in your eye when you talk about Flossie Bryant.
And so whenever we look at that area is to actually go in and have things like agriculture, silviculture, which is forestry, of course, as you know, and also maybe even doing some agrivoltaics. We might even be able to put the farmer's market down there. So instead of just having a regular, although they're very important, passive recreation area, if we can make it passive recreation plus something that's so educational for our kids to be able to go to, it'd be like a gathering spot. All the schools would have to come down there for their visits and learn about agriculture and silviculture, which are so important for the history and the economy of North Carolina, particularly our local area. So I'm really happy that they did that.
Yeah.
And now if we can just go the one step further and make that a reality, it would really be fantastic as well.
So what needs to happen for that to become a reality?
We need to work with the Park Service, the Park Service here in town. We need to work with the commissioners because all of them have ideas as well. So this is the conversation that we need to have. The conversation is that it's not so much to the buy, it's so important, but it's also to have a vision of what we can do with those areas. And so I think that's the goal of a lot of us, to be able to get them to sit down with us and talk about what is best for the community.
Yeah.
And I think they all have the community at heart. And sometimes we just need to talk about what the best vision for that is. And hopefully that will happen. Same thing for the West Bank.
Yeah.
You remember a few years ago, we actually got a few thousand signatures.
3,000 emails sent directly to Planning Director Rebecca Roth's email, and the fact that she still talks to me, I think, is pretty remarkable. Shows a great degree of forgiveness.
Yes.
But that was a monumental effort. I have to say, that was sort of my first foray into the environmental conservation. At the time, I was actually working on behalf of the Historic Wilmington Foundation about the West Bank and its preservation for historic significance of the viewshed of the battleship North Carolina. But I think it was so inspiring to me. I don't know if you left with that feeling too, but it was really incredible to see a coalition of environmental organizations come together, all agree on one message, which is pretty remarkable, and then that the community got behind it, and then that our elected leaders listened.
Yes.
That is how democracy is intended to work. It was beautiful.
Yeah, no, that was a real win. And we've been working on that all the way from back the Eagles Island Coalition, which had been doing this since the early 2000s. And just to see them get in line and say, after we showed them some information, they actually were keen on looking at it. I had the opportunity to actually, give a 20-minute presentation to the commissioners on that topic, which was really an amazing thing to be able to do, to talk about, the changes that we've got with sea level rise and how that would impact the area. The kind of folly of thinking about how can you build, a hotel on an area like that with the safety issues of ingress and egress whenever you're flooding in the area? So all the areas that we're looking at over there right now, we were primarily focusing, obviously, on the area south of the battleship because that's the highest area and where we wanted to put, and still do want to put, a small educational site that would be a companion to the battleship.
Right.
But in the interim, things have happened. We've still got Eagle Island group. We're now calling it the Friends of Eagles Island, by the way. And
no longer the Eagles Island Task Force?
No, we're trying to be friends.
You're trying to be friendly now. Okay, I got you.
And so instead of a task, it's actually a friend. And so being Friends of Eagles Island, we're trying as a group to be able to put in paddle trails as a first goal. And so have the Blue Way actually put up. So we want to have a stake in the ground, including that sign, and to be able to say that we can get out there and get a start anyway.
Very cool.
But along with that, just recently, very recently, we had a real win.
Yeah, we purchased the 28 acres.
28 acres?
28 acres, not all of it, not all, but it's still significant. It's a step in the right direction.
It's not what we want, for the area for south of the battleship, but even it's still on the west bank north of Peters Point.
It still is a portion of the river that when you look across is not going to be developed, for years to come. I was very heartened by that win. And tell me, how many more acres are we looking at trying to conserve over there?
The entire thing.
Yes, but how many acres is that? What are we aiming for?
Actually, Eagles Island has 3,100 acres. About 1,500 of that is the dredge spoil from the Army Corps of Engineers. So that's kind of off the table.
Okay.
But the area north of that is where all the rice fields, the old canals and ditches are that indicate the old rice areas. And so those are the areas that we're trying to look at. We'll have paddle trails going through there to highlight all of that. We'll be trying to, highlight the Gullah Geechee history that's there, but also the maritime history.
Yeah.
Because the maritime history is so important, and all along, the west bank there of Eagles Island, there's upwards of 30 plus ships or boats, that were their old tugs, etc. And so it's kind of a graveyard of history for our area, along with, of course, can't forget naval stores and all this as well. So the big three for the economy is highlighted on Eagles Island with the rice culture, with naval stores, and with our maritime history.
Yeah.
So if we can highlight those, bring them back for everybody to be able to see, vision, what those were and how important they were.
So 28 acres is still just a teeny little bite of the full pie, but we celebrate each win.
We do, and most of that is actually in Brunswick County, but the acreage that's in New Hanover, just south of the battleship, is the part that New Hanover County can do something about.
Yeah.
And that's important because what happened? They designate that as a conservation area as well.
Right.
That was a huge win for us.
Oh yes,
as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that doesn't change the UDO or the zoning of it, but it informs that, and so we can hope to see a little bit more of that conservation moving forward.
Yeah. And so what it does, it tells people, where our heart is, where we want our rules to be, to see if we can actually get those areas in place.
Right.
And so that brings us back to talking about some of the other things. Got a few issues too, though, right?
Yeah. Okay. So when you're talking about how we can designate conservation across the river, that does require downzoning. And that is a tool that was stripped of local governments, or at least quite restricted during the 2024 legislative session in a bill that was actually designed to be for Hurricane Helene relief. But right there at the end, literally at the absolute end of the bill, section 3K.1, it limited the ability for local governments to downzone. And downzone means that you are decreasing the density or intensity of use that can be used on a parcel of land. So this restricts us from, say, looking across the river and saying, hey, that used to be zoned for, I forget what it's currently zoned. It's clearly commercial.
It was industrial originally.
Right. So if it's industrial zoning, that's a pretty high intensity use. But if we were to try to take that down to a conservation use, right now, local governments don't have the authority to do that. So the Alliance for Cape Fear Trees, as well as a coalition of other tree nonprofits across the state, we will be advocating for in the next legislative session the return of a law that passed the Senate unanimously last year but stalled in the House. I believe that was Senate Bill 587. I'm a lot of fun at parties. So that law was again made it through the Senate unanimously, clearly indicating bipartisan recognition that a correction is necessary. And that law was intended to give local governments, county governments, the authority to downzone. And we should note that local governments don't do this lightly, right? Yes. Not lightly. But it is an important and critical tool for balancing environmental resources with growth, and that is true even beyond just the category of trees, right? But preserving natural spaces overall. So we will be pushing for that Senate bill to be taken back up and championed through the House this next session. And I really hope that folks will stay connected to our organizations. We're going to be putting out a lot of news about that, and hopefully sending a lot of emails to our local House representatives' inboxes.
Well, in fact, just to pat the Alliance on the back for just a second, and you too, in particular, is that vision that we've worked on, the Code and Canopy, which actually describes a lot of those. So certainly encourage folks to take a look at that. We're hoping that the planners, the commissioners, the councils all look at that, but individuals too, because we need individuals to support that,
right? And
then it can have that groundswell to actually get that done. Because I'm going to say, local authorities, in my opinion, know best.
Yeah.
And so it should not be the legislature dictating, what you're doing
growth
in the local
in Asheville
area.
Is totally different than growth in Wilmington.
And so we need to be, doing these things. We've seen good works come out of local areas. One of them, for instance, out in Leland, where they were trying to get
the burn ban. Yeah.
But they
we should
can't
list
do
that
that.
as they can't even.
But you can't do that because the legislature, without their approval of the legislature, then they can't really do that ordinance. So these are things that we just think, would be really important that, we get people to understand, what the problems with those are.
Right.
Because it is a problem.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that's unfortunate about this is that downzoning isn't sexy, talking about this type of in the weeds minutia of legislation. But I am heartened by how tuned in our community is. And we've got a lot of great folks working together to provide citizen advocates with the tools that they need to advocate both at a local level and at a state level for these types of reforms.
Yep.
And Code and Canopy, I don't know if I really want to qualify it as a win. It hasn't necessarily resulted in any change yet.
Getting it out was a win.
Getting it out was a win. It was, so for those who haven't seen it yet, it is our policy playbook that the Alliance for Cape Fear Trees put out. We researched ordinances and codes throughout the region, focusing largely in North Carolina, to identify tree protection ordinances, practices that would balance rooftops with treetops when it comes to development. So it started out as an 8-page working paper. It then became a 40-page designed book. It's a bit girthy, but we are hoping to use that as a tool. And one thing that I found really heartening was that apparently in a lot of the comments that the county got for Destination 2050, the most recent draft, many reference Code and Canopy. They were like, here, you know what to do. Yes. There's a playbook for it. Go forth.
Correct.
But it should be noted that, a lot of the recommendations in that document aren't possible until downzoning is reinstated for local government. So as I know it's not exactly fun or attractive, flashy, but we are going to need to see a groundswell of support so that local governments have the tools that they need to guide their decisions. I do want to say one thing that is listed in Code and Canopy as a goal that can still happen in the current legislative setup is environmental advisory committees. And I know that's a goal that you and I share for this next year. We would love to see this enacted by New Hanover County, by the city, whoever wants an environmental advisory committee. We've got big ideas on how to make this happen. But why do you think this would be helpful? And why is it allowable under the current laws?
And so, as that goes, been advocating this for many years.
You're hardcore on this.
And so I really think this is something that would benefit all of us so much. If you've got an advisory board, you can only benefit if you've got a variety of opinions. And that variety of opinions, if you could have on that board, would be important. So how can it go now? The fact of the matter is, now we fortunately that we've wanted, and this was a real win too a year ago, was to get a sustainability manager.
Oh my gosh.
For
Madeline
New Hanover
Wampler
County.
is a game changer.
Madeline is excellent, and one of the things with that that we can do is you can always form, if you can't form a formal board, you can actually have an informal advisory board as well. And Madeline is certainly in tune with this.
Yes.
And in her 1-year review that she just presented a few weeks ago, it's mentioned in there to have an advisory board too.
Yeah.
So that would be something that would be a key and be a way to communicate between the community and the council and the commissioners. So that would be something that would be really good. It's in Code and Canopy, as we mentioned.
Yeah.
It's in Soil and Water Board.
We're all advocating.
We've advocated for that as well. So we're on board, and hopefully it will get there.
You were the reason why it was in Code and Canopy, because you were like, wait a second, put my baby in there.
Well, one other thing I wanted to be in there too that I advocate for is the issue with our streets.
You are go for it, man. Give us your vision.
And so, anytime anybody drives into a town, you get your first impression when you come down the street, right? So what impression do you get when you come down Market Street? And all you have is businesses, businesses, businesses. So even though you can't put trees there necessarily because of the power lines, you can do sub-canopy and shrubs and grasses that would make everything so much more attractive, and also provide stormwater benefits and all the other benefits, cooling that we all know along the streets is going to be high with the the urban heat index.
And we are a Tree City, USA.
There you go.
There you go. So, we gotta act right,
If you're going to say it, let's do it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's something that I think would be a real win, and something that the city, county could get behind. And it's not just Market, it's the other streets too. And anytime that we can put in those kinds of vegetation that would be healthy and good for us all, I think we should probably do that. And of course, you may do that there, but there are areas with development, as we mentioned, that may be taking out a few of those. And so what we need to do is look at each one of these development areas, and in particular right now in the northern part of the county, Sidbury Road and others, is to think about, how are you going to develop those corridors?
Right.
Are you going to have another Market Street, or are you going to have a beautiful street that's laid out well, that has mixed use, has housing, but it also maintains some of the natural areas that are there?
Absolutely.
Okay, so in looking at the northern part of the county, there's a few areas that are certainly of consideration. Much of that area is composed of hydric soils. And those hydric soils are wet soils, what we call them. They're not wetlands necessarily, but they're wet soils. And wet soils notoriously, store water, but they're pretty bad at infiltrating water. And so whenever you put development on an area like that, such as several that have been put already into Sidbury, North Chase is a good example. And those areas that are going to flood because there's too much impervious surface area for the amount of pervious areas. And so if we maintain those green spaces a little bit more, if we have more than just isolated trees, that we actually have designated areas that make up that 20% cover, or hopefully more, then that would actually serve us well to prevent some of that flooding. We're having some wetter storms now, warmer temperatures, hold more moisture. And so we've seen several 500-year flood events, even 1,000-year flood events in the last few years, certainly in the last 6 years, that we should be concerned with. And it should be a cautionary thing for developing in those areas. There was a pretty famous, at least in my mind, famous study that came out right after Florence from the Zurich Insurance Group. And what they said in looking at the damages associated with our area is that you should look to disincentivize development in bad areas or risky areas. Hey, makes sense, right? Incentivize good areas, disincentivize bad areas. And so there are certainly bad areas that you look at in here, and you can develop them. You just need to be careful as to what you do and how you treat those areas.
Which goes back to downzoning, right? A lot of the places in our county where we should really be careful about development because of flooding risks, they're still zoned for build out. Developers still have a by right ability to pave over that land and increase the stormwater risks for all of us.
Well, by right development is certainly an issue for all of us.
I was teeing that up for you.
It might,
you know,
it might bring up the thought of a place like Sledge Forest.
It might.
And in looking at those areas, what you've got for Sledge Forest, and of course there's another one. We had over 3,000 signatures for the West Bank. Well, they had over 13,000.
Oh, they're at 13,000 now.
13,000
Nice.
for trying to say Sledge Forest should be preserved. Why should Sledge Forest be preserved? Well, Sledge Forest is primarily the area that's recognized by the North Carolina Natural Heritage Group. What they recognized is all the way coming down the corridor of the Northeast Cape Fear River, is that area is a corridor for vegetation and biodiversity. What you really need to have is a corridor so species can migrate freely. And all along the Northeast Cape Fear River, all the way down to Smith Creek, is recognized that way. It is a nationally significant heritage area, not just state, but nationally significant. And in that area, it has some really good, large longleaf pine, Atlantic white cedar, and a nice tidal wetland area down near the waterway. So all of that area, about 3,000 of the 4,000 acres of Hilton Bluffs or Sledge Forest, as they're called, is recognized as a wetland. Only thing is it's very low.
Yeah.
And by 2050, when we have another 1 foot of rise of sea level, and by 2070, when we've got 2 feet of rise, much of that area will be underwater.
Right.
So we just are advocating for maintaining that 3,000 acres.
Right.
Now, the upland area is different. It's 20 feet plus of elevation. It's not going to be impacted by sea level rise. But on the other hand, by right development says that you would be able to put a large number of houses. Right now, it's rural agriculture, so 1 house per acre.
R15.
And so what you can do, RA,
rural agriculture.
Rural ag. And so what you can do is 1 acre for 1 house.
Yeah.
So what they can do, since it's 4,000 acres, they can take those and we'll leave this 3,000 not developed, and we can put then 4 houses potentially on that acre.
So
that's not what they're doing right now.
Which is performance subdivision zoning.
There you go.
And the funny thing about all of this is that is designed to preserve green space, and instead it has become really a point of consternation with environmentalists, because ideally what it says is, great, we want you to preserve green space. So if you are if you're permitted to build 3,000 units in this land, but you're not doing that, well, then on this upland acres, you can increase the density by 3,000. But this is not really how performance subdivision was designed to be used. This was, first off, ideally for something more like a plot of 4 acres, right? Where you leave 3 acres undisturbed, and then you have 1/4 acre lots for 4 homes. When it is done to this extent, it is not really how that zoning tool was designed. And further, they're adding density, but they're also adding sprawl. They're not building up. They are just doing the teensiest little lots that they can to cram in and make as large profits as they possibly can.
Yeah, and one of the things that's with that is putting all those in that upland area. Of course, what you're going to end up with is just totally impervious areas and retention ponds.
Right.
With very little natural area.
Which they're allowed to count as green space.
Which they can count as green space.
And we would like to see that changed.
And in the UDO, what we'd like to also see is to obviously get rid of that particular performance piece that you can allow this
or at least
other
mitigate
acreage.
it.
And all things can be compromised.
Right. I see the value of performance subdivision zoning. I just think that it needs to have more guardrails. I don't think that anyone thought that, they were going to see Sledge Forest. This was just sort of, is like a philosophical exercise of what could happen, but a developer saw money signs and here we are.
So whenever you're looking at this years ago, of course, that was rural agriculture.
Yeah.
In fact, New Hanover County used to be a very agricultural county.
Yeah.
And so nobody ever thought about that back
Yep.
then when you were developing that
Right.
development ordinance for that particular zone. But we're hopeful that, Sledge, particularly the natural heritage part,
Right.
will be preserved. And, the whole area up there to have some kind of protections,
Right.
if you will. And of course, one of the things that's going to happen that's going to forward perhaps that process is deepening of the ports.
Oh,
So
nice segue.
if you're looking at that area along the river right there, all of that is, it's tidal, but it is freshwater. So it's tidal freshwater wetland areas and has cypress trees, the bottomland hardwoods. Only thing is, with sea level rise, we're obviously having salinity increases
right.
naturally. But if you deepen the river another 5 feet, which is currently the DEIS that is being looked at, that actually promotes salinity. And what the Corps, even in the DEIS, said is that because that salinity will be going further up the river, it's like a natural process. If I widen and deepen, it's easier for the waters to move
Sure.
in and out, right?
Sure.
So what will happen with that is that salinity will move further up and impact these freshwater wetlands. Therefore, you have to mitigate. And what they've identified is 1,071 acres that would have to be mitigated for. Another indication of change up the river
Right.
that we're looking at. So all of those things are, ones we need to be on guard
Yeah.
about as to what's going. The port deepening, the comment period obviously is ended
Yeah.
now. It ended last fall for the public.
And the Alliance did submit comments for that as well.
We did,
Yep.
and Soil and Water, Cape Fear River Watch, we all submitted comments to that. And hopefully when they come out back in September with
Yeah.
the actual EIS, some of those will be incorporated. I will say that there's been multiple people that and organizations that have now made some real statements on the economics of it
Yeah.
as well. That the DEIS really didn't treat the economics ideas nor the cultural things
Right.
as detailed as they
Right.
should have.
Would it affect the rice canals?
Yes.
The steepening?
What will happen with the rice canals is saltwater, brackish
Yeah.
water will be moving even more in. It turns out that whenever you've got marsh grasses and freshwater muds,
Yeah.
wetland areas, that whenever you bring brackish water in, that actually ends up degrading the soil too.
Yeah.
So it's not just killing the vegetation,
Right.
it's actually changing the soil, and that leads to
course it
a
does.
greater erosion of that. And so what we end up with is, the marshes could be, being lost through erosion
Yeah.
too.
Oh my gosh.
So it's not just salt water killing the trees.
Right. It's a whole ecosystem.
It's a whole
There's-
ecosystem.
and
Hey, it's connected, right?
It's connected. And, one thing that I find interesting about having this conversation with you is you're so clearly tied into the environmental aspects of all of this, but I think you also carry a reverence for the history of these environmental resources. And I see that as something where you and I are very much see eye to eye on this, and that when in my last job, I protected and preserved irreplaceable historic
Absolutely.
resources. And in this one, it's the same thing. You can't build a new old house and you can't plant a new old tree.
Kind of reminds me of the bridge.
Oh,
idea,
gosh.
right?
Oh, the bridge.
So the bridge, because, in the historic
Yeah.
district, what you decide to do with the bridge, whether it was going to be 100 foot, 137
Yeah.
feet, which they have now decided on now is the gospel.
Yeah.
But we all had a different opinion of
Right.
that for
historic preservation reasons. It's going to, at least based on the current drawings and depictions, if it is that height, it's going to wipe out some historic neighborhoods. It is going to drop all of that bridge traffic onto South Fifth Avenue, which makes no sense. And it's going to cut off marginalized communities south of Dawson and Wooster from economic opportunities north in the business district. So
and for a very limited reason, because they found in the study
Oh
that
my gosh, don't even get me started.
no ships were passing underneath the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge, nor any businesses that would require those large ships
Right.
moving north. So therefore, for that reason, but also monetary reasons,
It's going to be so much more expensive to
Much
build
more
a
expensive.
big bridge like that, like double as expensive.
Well, so what they're looking at right now for the 137, even with today, not when they build it,
Yeah.
1.1 plus billion dollars.
Yeah.
And if you were to do the 100 versus the 137,
Mm-hmm.
several $100 million less.
Yeah.
And we've only got $300 plus million dedicated to that.
Right.
So we're going to have to find a lot more money to do that.
I think
bridge
that
with
conversation is going to be going on for quite
I
some
believe
time.
it will.
So there's so much to keep track of locally. How would you recommend that folks stay involved and stay, pitch in where they can with all of this? What advice do you have to the regular citizen that's out there just wanting to see more green space?
I think one of the things that we found over the years is that you just need to keep throwing it in front of people. Because persistence pays. It paid off with the county commissioners and city council. I'm telling you, 5 years ago, it was very different.
Yeah.
They were not listening to things. And now, every one of them, when you vote unanimously for, like, the West Bank,
Yeah.
for Flossie Bryan Tract, etc., engaging with code and canopy, you just got to be there. And anytime you have an opportunity, in my opinion, to come talk to somebody, that's really a plus. And you just got to show up every time there's an opportunity to be able to talk to them. If you're not going to be willing to show up, it's not going to work. So we need everybody showing up every time there's an issue that comes. And there are many people in this community that are really excited to have you out. Sharon Valentine, is one of them. Anytime you got a chance to talk to, like for me, talk to the Sierra Club or community organizations. I'm going to be talking to River Bluffs next week, about some of these issues and what goes on. I think it's incumbent upon us, if we love the area, and I certainly do, is to make sure you can get out there and do what you can.
Yeah, I think that our local leaders are sitting up and paying attention. They see that folks are voting, and they're voting, not necessarily blue or red. They are voting green.
Mm-hmm.
Folks are really fired up about these issues locally, and it's kind of heartening to see how it stretches across the aisle.
In fact, you noticed everybody that was
green,
that was being candidates for office this past November.
Oh yeah,
everyone
talked about trees.
Everyone talked about trees. And so
which I look forward to now. I can be like, here you said that the trees were important, so what's going to happen with those?
What can we do with that? So
yes.
It's very important to actually be there. And whenever folks realize it can be not just green, but it can be economics,
right?
Then that's what's the key.
Yeah.
If it's not economics involved, and that's also incumbent upon us to show why the economics work. And it does work.
It does. It is there. To be clear, the economic benefits of trees and green space are, it really does add up, but sometimes we don't necessarily see that, right? But it makes our city more attractive, more livable. It improves our health outcomes. We could go on and on about why trees and green space are important, but I have a feeling most of the folks listening to this probably agree with us.
Well,
but
I would say one of the things in all of my years of teaching, one of the things I'd always say, passion only gets you so far. So you've got to have the economics as well. And so anytime that you can weigh those pros and cons and show the reasons that, the pros of doing this are really important, then I can stop having clear cutting. I can stop having the fires, with the burning. I can have then green space associated with these areas and maintain not just a few trees, but an actual green patch, in all of these developments as well.
I agree with you in terms of like show up at these meetings, right? And stay involved, stay connected. I think it is there are protests happening all across our country for a variety of reasons, and protests are good and important. I also always do tell people, though, when you write a letter, you're protesting. You know, you're not making a sign, but you're giving voice to your dissent, oftentimes, or in favor of something, or in favor. We're friends. We're not arguing. We're friends.
That's another thing really true too, is thank the people that do the right things.
Yeah.
I mean, send
that's
letters,
such a good point.
Send letters of thanks, because every time they do something like the West Bank, type that letter and send it to the commissioners and make sure they realize that their vote did mean something to all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a really cool year, and I'm so looking forward to all we accomplish in 2026. I have no idea what that's going to look like, but maybe we will be having this conversation again in 1 year's time, and
maybe there'll be even more wins. And but there's always a challenge or two to do.
They will crop up.
So we'll see what we can do about that for this year as well.
Awesome.